Hello everyone, my name is Joey Michaels and today I'm going to be talking you through my Unit 2 short course, and I'm going to be specifically talking you through a scenario through the halfway point with a couple students and how I would make some alterations to my course in order to help these students improve. So let's get started. So to begin, I want to talk to you about the course that I designed. The course is titled Unit 2, The Journey. In regards to subject matter, it is an English literature course that will focus specifically on Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451. In terms of the actual skills students will be focused on, it will be reading comprehension, which will be assessed through their quizzes, speaking and listening, which will be assessed through their online discussion posts, and then a major emphasis in argumentative writing, which will be the prime focus throughout the entire unit, where students will be doing in-class writing and learning how to write argumentatively on literature. And again, this will be for ninth grade English students as the target audience. To get started here, this is halfway point in the unit, and after this halfway point, I had realized that there were two students, which are labeled here as student A and B, who were falling well below the class average in each of the three essential skills for this particular class. So if we look at reading comprehension in the quizzes, class average was 85% so far halfway through, whereas students A and B were scoring somewhere in the 50 and 40%, which is indicated by the red mark there. In terms of speaking, the online discussion posts, students have been averaging 95% in this area, as opposed to students A and B who were in the 60% range, which is indicated by the yellow here because they are close to failing. And then finally, we have the writing, which students are averaging 78% there, and students A and B are in the 50% range, again, indicated by the red. So clearly this is an issue where student A and B are falling behind, and it is the job of the instructor to analyze that and evaluate how we can improve. So we'll talk about that next. Um, in regards to the changes that are made throughout this particular course, I focused heavily on the major theorists model in regards to some ethical considerations in collecting student data. This was a really good approach, which is kind of based off of social cognitive theory for instructors collecting data for their students. The faculty member has to be, has to have self-efficacy when they're collecting student data and interpreting that. And ultimately, these four guidelines provide a really great model for how to collect student data effectively and how to also use it in terms of the value. Right, there has to be a specific value for the uh, the student data that you're collecting. So it's important that teachers can identify those things prior to getting started with collecting student data. So these four guidelines really helped keep everything focused on what I wanted to achieve, which was improving the scores of especially these two students. Some of the other considerations that I had throughout this unit and really in identifying the problem for students A and B were, are the students' quiz scores really indicative of a lack of understanding, or is it more so they are not reading? So if it's really the former here, the lack of understanding, obviously one of the things that I would also need to address is, well, do the students need to require more one-on-one work with the instructor? Um, Moving on, some other considerations that I had made were, do these students have specific accommodations? And with that being said, the students are IEP students, so they do have specific accommodations that are being met, that are mandated by the state. So this is obviously an ethical consideration um, with how things are being met and what specific accommodations they are receiving per their IEP plan. And then I would work with team members and social workers to determine if those accommodations are enough for each of those students, and maybe there need to be more in place. Finally, is there another reason for their reluctance to participate? Is there something else going on outside the classroom that maybe I should be aware of to make a change and kind of understand their specific problem. Moving on, as I kind of put together this course and evaluate the course consistently, the research-based approach here was Chickering and Gamson's 7 principles. Obviously, these state 7 great principles or key principles to guiding a course. And some of the highlighted ones here that I really used in the evaluative process of students A and B was one, encouraging contact between students and faculty. I'll talk about that with the face-to-face meetings that I set up with the students, as well as encouraging active learning. That's obviously a very crucial step that students need to engage in the work and make it meaningful. And that's something that I used in trying to give them opportunities to earn points back. Um, so these were just a couple of the principles that were used and put in place in the evaluative process. I kind of broke each of their evaluative processes down into specific steps. So I wanted to start with improving their reading comprehension. And as I stated earlier, a key to this was conferencing with both student A and student B individually in the light of gaining perspective on their situation. It kind of gives them a chance to share what their feelings are and where they feel their struggles are, as well as gives me the opportunity to better understand their perspective and how I can make a change. In terms of improving reading comprehension, I would provide these students with study guides for their specific reading comprehension questions to focus their readings so that they can have those key details in front of them and kind of use those questions to guide their reading. I would also require them to do some regular annotation checks where they'd have to identify 3 specific key details in the reading and a main idea. This would help them with their reading comprehension and help them as they prepare for the final step, which is quiz retakes, and giving them the opportunity to retake some quizzes here to improve their overall percentage and score, as well as demonstrate their comprehension. Next would be working to improve the speaking, and again, this comes from the online discussion boards. It was determined that both student A and B, their comments on a weekly basis really were vague, 1 sentence, 2 sentences at the most, and not really providing any depth to the essential question. And they were also not, um, you know, responding to their peers. So there wasn't that collaborative effort. What I would do to improve their speaking was, after meeting with them and talking them through the process, open up a new discussion for both of these students that they can engage together in an online discussion forum over an essential question, and really emphasize on demonstrating their critical thinking through that active learning. So they still have to, engage in the actual task of the discussion, but I'm giving them that extra opportunity to earn some points back and demonstrate their growth here, and hopefully encourage them to continue to collaborate throughout the remainder of the course. Finally, working to improve writing. Again, I would meet face to face with these students individually, and with that in face-to-face interaction, I would talk with them and review their most recent writing samples from start to finish and have them identify what their strengths and weaknesses are on these in-class mini writes since they are doing poorly. Once we have gone through and reviewed and spent some time reteaching each of those essential writing structure and concepts, and we've kind of gone over those things, I would then allow students to complete a rewrite in which they have to rewrite their assignment and also reflect and provide that reflection on what they needed to fix and why they needed to fix it in order for them to, one, improve their percentage in the writing category and demonstrate growth, but also so that they can fix those mistakes and they got that reteaching and extra support that they needed to make improvements for the next time. The last thing I would do with these students before kind of ending this process would be to set some goals. And I think goals are very important, not only for the instructor, but for the student. So each of these 3 goals is really aligned to each of the skills, and it's about getting them to the class average by the end of the instructional unit. I think this is important because it focuses not only the instructor's attention with these students, but it also gives the students a focal point to really motivate them throughout the rest of the unit. And I think even more importantly, it provides an encouraging factor knowing that, hey, we can get to this percentage, it's still doable. Let's set a goal and let's work to achieve that. So hopefully that will provide some intrinsic motivation for these students as they complete the rest of the unit. These are my references as I have gone through and cited, Chickering and Gamson's 7 rules of principles, and finally where I pulled the social cognitive theory from. Thank you for your time. I hope this was an informative presentation. Have a great day.